Some backstory before I begin. This is something that I found out about a week ago, but it has apparently been going on for several years. I'm a 24-year-old female and my partner is a 24-year-old male. His ex girlfriend met me before, another key member of the story, and is also 24. And her ex boyfriend, the one directly before she dated my boyfriend, is a 35-year-old male. To start, I began frequently attending a goth club and their events that happen once a week. My two best friends are there regularly, so I decided to work on not being a depressed hermit that never leaves my house and start socializing and making more than my two only friends. So I started going with the intention of making new friends, and I did. It was all going really well, and I'm usually very shy and anxious. But I started feeling safe enough there that I was able to open up to people approaching me and befriend them. One night, I kept noticing a goth boy in makeup and platform boots, because one, he has a cool cape, and two, he seems to always be somewhere nearby. It's a large club with several rooms in and out, but I didn't think anything odd of it immediately. He eventually approached me to say hello, and I asked if I knew him, since I've noticed him nearby frequently throughout the night. And he says, "Yeah, you're Nero's girlfriend, right?" I replied, "Yeah, so you're a friend of Nero then?" He laughs and says, "Well, kind of. We actually just have a mutual ex girlfriend. All of my boyfriend's exes are pretty terrible aside from one, from the stories I've heard from him, his parents, and his friends. So I had no interest in hearing more after that." I told him it was nice meeting him and ran off to rejoin my friends. The very next week, he's there again and says hello to me when he sees me. I realized before that I hadn't asked him his name, so after he greeted me, I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name the last time." He says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was so drunk, I'm embarrassed for even bringing up Marie like that. But my name is Gerald." I tensed up hearing Marie's name because she was a girl Nero dated before me, and she still openly admitted to having feelings for Nero and tried to make advances several times from the moment we started dating. They were all shut down. I trust my boyfriend, but I have a very strong dislike for Marie. I said, "Oh, so your mutual ex is my favorite one," sarcastically. He nodded. "Yeah, be careful with Marie, she is a dangerous one." He talked a bit more about his previous relationship with Marie, mostly about how manipulative she was, how much she cheated on him, just generally bad mouthing her. He kept stuttering, seeming a bit awkward and shy, so I wrote him off as being harmless and we finished our conversation and didn't speak again for the rest of the night. Over the next couple months, I'm there every week as usual, but suddenly, so is Gerald. He hadn't been someone that regularly attended before, but I wasn't really feeling paranoid about it yet because he seemed so awkward, shy, and innocent when I talked to him. It's like the only goth club around, so maybe he discovered he liked the place and was also just trying to make new friends. So I told myself it would be irrational to think he was there for me. I have PTSD and anxiety disorders, so it's not uncommon that I have irrational, intrusive, and sometimes paranoid thoughts. So I just chose to ignore him. One afternoon, Marie calls Nero as he and I were laying down watching a movie. She wanted to catch up and see how he was doing. They had been friends for years before they dated, and while I don't particularly like her, I trust him, and I would never try to dictate who he can and can't be friends with. He has a pretty short, casual conversation, asks if she needs anything else, and then hangs up the phone. I told him, "Oh, that reminds me. I forgot to tell you that I met one of Marie's exes a little bit ago." He laughs and asks which one. I said his name was Gerald. As my boyfriend's smile immediately fell from his face and his eyes went huge, all the color drained from his face. "Did you say you met Gerald? Where did you meet him? What did he say?" Feeling panicked by his reaction, I'm stuttering. "Nora and I were at the goth club the one night and he asked if I was your girlfriend." My boyfriend starts freaking out. I should mention he has several mental disorders, one of them being a panic disorder. So he's on the verge of having a panic attack, and I'm trying to calm him down in all of my confusion. When I finally get him calmed down enough, he starts to explain. Before him and Marie dated 5 years ago, she had broken up with Gerald for having abusive and obsessive behavior. Afterwards, Gerald began stalking Marie. He would wait outside of her house, wait for her to leave, and follow her everywhere she went. Never confronting her, but just watching and writing it all down in a journal. Writing down what she was doing, how it made him feel, writing down all the little things she did throughout her day. In this journal, he also wrote about how he was sorry for cheating on her, telling her about the two girls he cheated on her with, a 16 and a 17-year-old, and he was 30 at that time. It was already odd, in my opinion, that he was a 30-year-old dating a 19-year-old, but he also cheated on her with underage girls, and he openly admitted it in his journal. And when Marie started dating Nero, he began following Nero as well. Another important thing to know about my boyfriend is that he is schizophrenic. Nothing could possibly be worse to a paranoid schizophrenic trying to create stability in his life than an actual stalker following him around and making him feel that much more paranoid. Jero followed them around, writing about both of them in the journal. He printed screenshots from their social media accounts and pictures he'd taken of them, pasting it into his horrifying journal. And then Gerald waited for Maria and Nero to be at her house, and they just left a journal full of horrors at her doorstep. Obviously, both of them panicked when they read the contents. Nero begged Maria to go to the police, but she didn't want to. Something about her child and being scared of it making her look like an unfit mother. Nero broke things off with Marie due to incompatibility, and a year later we met and ended up dating pretty quickly. But, unbeknownst to him, Gerald never stopped stalking Nero. We discovered he would make fake accounts just to try to check in and see what Nero was doing, since he blocked all of his other accounts that he knew of. We found out that Gerald had added Nora, Nero and I's close mutual friend. And of course, through Facebook, there are lots of pictures of the three of us together, which is how Gerald found out about me. And I typically accept friend requests with a decent number of mutual friends, so Gerald added me from there, realizing I was Nero's current partner. I'm pretty open about a lot of things, with most of my posts being set to public. I'm always posting pictures of Nora and myself at this goth club, every week, so he knew that he could run into me there. But since learning about all of this, I started looking back through photographs from the weekly events, and I'm finding him somewhere in the background, near me in numerous pictures without me even knowing. He played the shy, awkward card, and I really fell for it. It was stupid, and I fell for it. Yesterday, talking to other friends about my discoveries, showing them who he is, even multiples of them have said, "Oh yeah, I thought you were friends with him because I always saw him following you and Nora around." I felt so nauseous I wanted to vomit. I was somehow so oblivious. I didn't even realize that my boyfriend's ex's ex had been stalking me, following me to the club, appearing in every room I'm in when I'm in it. Nero showed me pictures of the journal entry and it was terrifying. My stomach dropped and I felt sick. How could I have been so obviously naive? My safe space no longer feels like it's safe anymore. He just spreads his obsession, continually growing and latching on to others involved, while he's still following Marie. Even after all these years, she's afraid when she leaves her house, and now I'm afraid to leave mine. I'm afraid to go back to the club and see him again. I'm afraid for all my friends that attend. How much more will his obsession grow? Who else is he going to follow? Has he followed me home? Does he know where I live too? I'm feeling so paranoid and unsafe. I haven't left my boyfriend's house since I found out. I'm afraid to be home and alone. I obviously won't be going back to the club for a while. I asked Marie to take the journal to the police and get a restraining order. I wanted one myself, but I'm not sure I have enough evidence to support needing one. But she definitely does. I hope one day soon I won't have to look over my shoulder when I leave my house. So you manipulative, predatory, creepy stalker Gerald, let's not meet ever again. So I'm going to go ahead and say there's graphic violence against animals in this story. This is truly horrible and one of the worst things I've ever seen that disturbs me to this day. I wish I had not seen what I had, and I don't want to ruin someone else's day who may be reading this, so I'm warning you now. When I was a freshman in college, I fell into pretty bad depression. I didn't realize it until later, but I was basically a zombie. I despised my roommate, so I spent a bunch of time out of the dorm. I had a habit of walking around the town at night listening to music. I had just discovered Nirvana, the Pixies, Soundgarden, Meat Puppets, Alice in Chains, so on and so on. It was 2003, so it's safe to say I was a little bit late into the game. I was walking down a stretch of road that on one side was a field and the other was a residential area. It was probably a little bit past midnight because the school rec center had closed, but I wasn't ready to go home yet. It was dark, but since there were street lights, I could see a little bit ahead of me. A car would drive past me maybe once every 5 to 10 minutes, but otherwise it was vacant. About a quarter mile down the road, I saw someone on a bike riding back and forward. I thought he was trying to do a trick or something. I just saw him go a few feet away and then pedal fast and hit a bump of some sort. He did it several times as I continued walking towards him. I was closer now, but I suck at distance, so I couldn't tell you how far it was, but I could make out the person. A man, either an older teen or young adult, and a smallish black object on the ground. I thought it was an old black shirt, but it was moving a bit. Maybe a trash bag. The man stopped, stared at me, and smiled. He then sped away in the direction I was going. As I got closer, I started to realize what I was seeing. It was a cat, a medium sized black cat. It had a brick placed over its tail and appeared to have a broken paw. It was clear that the man on the bike had run it over several times. Its spine had appeared broken. It had a horrid head trauma. I'll skip the details of that. The worst part is that it wasn't dead. I gasped and felt sick when I realized what I'd been watching happening for the last 15 minutes. I didn't know what to do. The cat was suffering and it was clearly dying, but it was in horrible pain. There was no way that this cat would survive, and given my mental state, I guess I felt extra empathetic to its suffering. I ended up killing it very quickly. I don't like to think or talk about it, and I've never told a single soul. I had so much guilt for doing what I had to, but I also know it was right, even it was so hard for me and it scarred me. I just kind of sat next to it and cried for what seemed like hours. I don't know who it belonged to, but I know they didn't need to find it like this. It didn't have a collar, so I had no one to call. I ended up running to the gas station and buying some plastic trash bags. I went back and the cat was still there. I scooped it up using the trash bags and walked into the field. With my hands and a stick, I dug a very shallow grave. I buried the cat and put a rock over it as a marker for the burial spot. I sat for a while sobbing and I eventually continued my walk. At some point, I just felt like the guy on the bike was around me. I felt terrified and sick to my stomach. I didn't see him, but I believed he was there. I just sensed it. I ended up walking the rest of the night. Watching the worst of humanity didn't help my depression. I made a habit out of visiting the cat. I named it Stella and ended up finding a nicer rock and writing its name on the stone to replace the old one. I eventually started feeling better, but anytime I thought of the cat, I think to the moment of just watching the man torture her and not even realize it was happening. I can't imagine taking such glee and torment on an innocent animal. I'm sure you're a psychopath, and I can only hope and pray you never treat any animal or any other living creature as you treated Stella. For the guy on the bike that I came way too close to, let's never meet again. I'm posting this here because my sister has constantly asked me for months and months. I'm aware of this forum, but never thought about sharing this, but I do feel maybe it could help people. This isn't a nice story and traumatized me for about 5 years. My sister said this would be a good place to share this and hopefully deter anybody from making silly drunk decisions. Around May of 2013, me and three friends from university were taking a gap year and decided to go traveling around North America. We're from the northwest of England. Up until this incident, we were in the US for maybe 4 months. We left within a few days of this happening and returned home. Our trip was what you would expect from three 20-year-old students. Lots of partying, drinking, and drugs. We were relatively sensible, though, amidst all this, and never really done anything people would consider crazy or irresponsible. We were renting a small flat that had about 5 to 6 usual spots we would go to where we would meet people, mostly women, and get drunk and hopefully try to get lucky. One particular day, we had been to the local supermarket to get food and things for the flat. We took a cab and the driver seemed really friendly and we got talking. He told us about a pretty good place to go drink and filled our heads with the usual full of hot women, cheap drinks, etc. The driver even told us he would be going himself tonight, and we should consider coming too, and we could have a drink together. He was very interested in the English Premier League and wanted to pretty much talk about it because nobody there was into it at that time. We arranged to meet him around 9:30. He wrote the address on a piece of paper and said any taxi driver will know where to take us. So we get ready like any usual night. We hailed a taxi and we handed him the note. First red flag. He looks back at the three of us and asks us if we know where this place is. We tell him about the other cab driver and he basically warns us that it's an invite only sort of place. And apparently things get a little weird in there. We decide to go anyways. He also warns us that this will be pretty expensive fare, as it's maybe a 35-minute drive. I remember having second thoughts, but my friends would not be swayed. We arrived a short time later, and the place can only be described as a derelict looking building just on the edges of what seemed to be an industrial estate. Pretty creepy to look back at it. We get out of the taxi, pay for the fare, and head towards the building. There was a main door, but it was a huge double fronted steel door, so we knocked only for there to be no answer. We walked around the building and found a few guys having a smoke outside. We told them we had been invited by a cab driver and described him. They knew who he was talking about and told us to wait outside while they fetched him. Note, all the people were not welcoming and polite. They were actually pretty strange and seemed like they were trying to intimidate us. The taxi guy comes out and isn't happy as earlier in the day, but seems friendly enough, and we go inside with him. This place was pretty dimly lit, with the sound of music coming from below. Sort of sounded like it was underwater. He told us to wait a while. He went into a room and he came out with a stamp and stamped each of our hands. I remember the stamp was an orange circle with an X in the middle. Didn't think anything of it, just a small detail I remember. He tells us to follow him, and as he promised, pretty large area full of people dancing and seemingly having a good time. But something about it seemed really off. It was as if it was either scripted or all the people were just really tripping. It turned out to be the latter. We started drinking and making small talk with people who were either too messed up to converse or just didn't seem interested in talking with us, so we made our own fun. We started drinking a lot and tried to source some drugs. We found the taxi guy, and he told us to give him some money and he'd bring us back some good shit. So he did. He stuck to his word, and about 30 minutes later, we were pretty messed up but still enjoying ourselves. Here's where the night takes a turn. Guy approaches us in a long jacket and asks us some questions. Where are you guys from? Are you armed? And some others that I can't remember. Pretty weird, but we brush it off. A few more guys who were his friends started talking with us. After a while, we agreed we would go back to their place for a short after party. Literally the worst mistake of my life. We get into the truck with these guys, and there's a few more following us. Seemed pretty normal at this point until we realized that nobody else in the truck was talking except us. There was no more music. I started to panic a little at this point, and I suggested maybe we should get out because we didn't know where we were and we should be getting back. My two friends didn't argue, but the guy driving the truck completely ignored us. We get back to this sort of studio apartment with two floors. It was a very open plan except for a few chairs and some weird random art pictures propped up on wooden mounts. Again, no music, kind of weird at this point, and I basically said to my friends something like, let's just slip out for a ciggy and then we'll leave. They wouldn't let us leave, basically telling us to have a good time and chill out until the others arrive. We were all pretty worried at this point, even though we hadn't been threatened or anything seemed really off, until one of the guys who hadn't said a word the whole drive came and sat near us and plainly asked my friends while taking a hold of his wrist, how much would I have to pay you to watch you slit your wrist? We didn't know what to say, and I tried to awkwardly laugh it off. At this point, the drugs and alcohol effects were wearing off, and I realized what a bad situation this is. I stand up and say we really need to leave because we're busy the next day, only to be told we have to stay for a while. It wasn't an order as much as a suggestion, but it may as well have been. We flat out don't drink anything at this point, and we can't even talk amongst ourselves because the guy who asked about my friend's wrist is basically sitting right in between us. The taxi guy, nowhere to be seen. Another group of people arrived, and they were dressed really strange, to us at least. Long coats, huge boots, fingerless gloves, usually something we would have laughed about in the situation, but right now it wasn't funny. After the new group conversed with the old group, they literally all walked to the part of the room we were sitting in and ask us if we have any family in the country with us because they know we are visiting. I think pretty quickly and I say yes, I gave my brother and his friends the address of the place we went to, literally. I think pretty quickly and say yes, I gave my brother and his friends the address of the place we went to initially, and they'll be worrying. He flat out calls me a fucking liar. At this point, we're all pretty terrified. One of my friends was asking what they were doing with us and why they wouldn't leave us alone. After maybe another 2 hours of sitting on the couch, and the other groups of people standing in little groups and turning and shooting us looks every now and then, I get up and I ask what time it is and I need to be going. I basically get told to go sit back down and I don't need to be worried about the time. Enter taxi guy. He comes in the room. Straight away we make contact. He mouths something to me, but I couldn't make it out. But I knew whatever it wasn't good. I stand up and walk towards him. He meets me halfway and he tells me he isn't allowed to be talking to me, and he's sorry. At this point, I'm considering that we may die in this place in some sort of crazy horror movie style cult killing. I return to my friends and tell them I think they will do something really bad if we don't find a way to leave. I remember the studio wasn't very high in the building, maybe one or two flights of stairs, and that the main door was open when we arrived. One of my friends stood up and basically said something along the lines of, "Look, whatever you're doing, either do it now or let us leave." Literally, everybody except us and the taxi guy started laughing hysterically. Fear started turning pretty quickly into anger, and I basically said to my friends, "Fuck this, let's just walk past him." As we approached the door, one guy pretty much stands and blocks the door. In my head, I thought if I shove him, open the door, and run, maybe we can get out. But basically, before I got a chance, the whole group started beating us up, spitting, kicking, pretty much everything. I remember the taxi guy trying to drag the guys off of us, but that was it. After they beat us up, I remember being dragged back down the same stairs as we were brought in. I also remember seeing my friends being dragged behind me, as I'm facing the opposite way. It was light outside at this point, as I see the main door. We were urinated on as soon as we got outside, and they had gas poured all over us. At this point, I thought I was going to be burned alive, and I was sobbing. My friends, the same. The whole ordeal ended a few minutes later. The guys got into the same two trucks and left. We were bloody, covered in piss and gas, and terrified. We basically ran the first chance we got. It took us about 2 hours of walking until we came across a petrol station. The man working there was horrified and called the police, who arrived relatively quick. He asked us if we could remember where this happened, and we no longer had the piece of paper with the address to the place, and none of us could remember the name. We were still pretty shook up, but we managed to direct them back to the building we were locked in. None of the injuries we got from the beating were very bad, just bruises and cuts. We told the story maybe 5 or 6 times in all, and we were later informed that some tourists who reported the very same thing. The building we were in was used for art shows, and the locks to the studio we were in had been smashed off. This basically sparked agoraphobia. After returning to the UK, a few days later, it probably ruined the best part of my 20s, and to this day it still traumatizes me. But having a son and family and such has helped me greatly. Whether it was a gang of lunatics trying to terrify us, or whether they had other plans, I don't know. But it was the most terrifying time of my life. One of my two friends also had to seek counseling, and the other basically won't talk about it. Even though I know this is a forum for these kind of things. Mainly I'm posting this to say if you're going to go out and get drunk and do drugs, stay sober enough to make the right decisions and never put yourself in this situation. Just to add, we all had phones, but when we were brought into the apartment, we were asked nicely to leave our phones in the truck, as no one used phones because it could ruin the night and cause people to be antisocial. we were so stupid we agreed. So, creepy guys in the club, let's not meet.